So this video is going to be shorter than my Metal Gear Rising one because boy do those take forever to edit. So here we're going to be covering an actually scary game. This game is of course the one I've teased so much, and that's Alien Isolation.
Hello, motherfucker.
So then let's just jump right into it. Let's start off with the miscellaneous stuff before we get into the important things. First, for the graphics, they look quite nice and find this perfect middle ground between futuristic and realistic. The cutscenes also look very well motion captured, with the only problem being they completely stop after the 5th or so mission. The only problem is that in game, the characters' facial expressions look very much like they've been on crack for 2 days straight, particularly Ricardo's. As for the soundtrack definitely serves its purpose of being very tense and dangerous situations, while also having calm yet foreboding soundtracks when there's no current danger. But none of these soundtracks are ones I'd come back to, unlike Metal Gear Rising. As for performance and stuff, the game never lagged, but I did encounter one huge glitch that broke the game for 30 minutes, where it wanted me to find a keycard off of the androids, but when I left the room they just disappeared. Now, let's move on to the story. Spoilers by the way. The story is definitely better than ones you'd find in most horror games. It's not really cheesy and does try to take itself seriously. Up until mission 16, I'd say the story is really well done, with the only exception being how they killed off Waits before Amanda could have gone back to him, completely wasting what could have been a very interesting interaction. However, after mission 16, the game completely drops the ball. Other than Marlowe's death, all the other characters dying literally has zero purpose. It felt like they're only done to show, oh my god, look, one of the characters died, look how crazy that is. Are you shocked or sad yet? Their deaths are portrayed in a way where you literally forget they died after 5 seconds, because right after they die, you're put in danger, and Amanda doesn't really react strongly to them either. Finally, they all die in super anticlimactic ways. When Taylor died, I was just laughing at how stupid it was. The ending was also very anticlimactic too. It ends with just, oh my god guys, look, the alien is still here guys, are you shocked? And you do a very simple QTE to escape, and then the game just suddenly ends there. Way too abrupt in my opinion. On a side note, I think the gameplay leading up to the ending is a nice trip down memory lane as you technically go through many of the places you've explored already. However, it decides to forget which genre it is and thinks the game is Uncharted. Now, let's move on to the characters. The only completely forgettable one in my opinion is Taylor. She has very few lines and very little that's interesting about her. However, Samuel, Marlowe, Waits, and even Axel all have stuff slightly interesting to them, but of course they only get like 5 minutes worth of screen time and lines, so while these characters are slightly interesting, they're not too much so. The only exception to this is of course Mama and Ricardo. There's no reason for me to explain why he's awesome. You know if you just played the game, this guy's my bro. Well, was my bro. But he got some sick moves though. Oh yeah, I forgot to consider the character we're actually playing as, Amanda Ripley. I didn't watch any of the Alien movies, so I can't really care about her journey to find out what happened to her mom, and other than that, there's not really anything interesting about her, but she's fine. Finally, let's get into the lore. The lore is definitely there, but it's quite confusing to unravel as you don't know the order of the messages on the terminal, but I suppose that diehard fans will definitely have fun with this. But of course, let's move on to the biggest part of the game, the gameplay. I'll start with the non-alien gameplay. One thing that's really cool is that you have multiple ways of getting through the area. You can either go loud or conserve your resources by going stealth. This is also where all your items become actually effective. Sorry about that guys, I had to get Dio in here before this edit went on too long, so anyways, let's see here. Where were we? Okay, so we're talking about the other weapons we can use. So those weapons include the EMP mine, stun baton, pipe bomb, shotgun, and of course your handy dandy flames. If I did have one problem, is that these items I mentioned are only viable when the alien is completely deactivated. Also, the humans are very inconsistent as there's only like 5 passive NPCs you'll encounter throughout the entire game, and it's very inconsistent whether or not the humans will shoot at you, as some are more trigger happy than others. Also, changing your inventory in the middle of the battle is very awkward because you have to stand still as the enemies are chasing you. It doesn't help either that the inventory wheel itself isn't well designed either. Speaking of items, the craft system is pretty cool, but I have 2 problems. The first is that the items can be a bit too abundant, mainly because if you're good at stealth, there'll almost never be a situation where you have to use them. Another problem is items are very hard to notice, them just glowing when you get near definitely isn't enough when you consider the funky lighting. Now let's move on to the more general gameplay stuff. The first problem is obviously the map. With how many different floors there are, it's very confusing on where to go, and it's more reliable to rely on the motion tracker. The second and last problem is that some sections where you're doing nothing and there's no tension are very boring. Doing all the mini tasks like hacking and using the maintenance jack I'm fine with because there's always the tension of if someone or something has seen you. But when you're calling a transit, or especially when you're in space, there's nothing really for you to do. Now let's move on to the alien gameplay, first starting with the positives. I like how you have a lot more options here than in other stealth games, as you can just hide in one spot until the alien vents, use a distraction, or try to sneak to your objective slowly. What's great about these three options is that they each have their own pros and cons. Like, if you try to sneak to your objective, you may finish the level faster, but the alien can easily turn around at any time and catch you lacking. Also, each of these three options have further mini options. For example, if you're trying to sneak your way through, you can do this on the ground or becoming a sussy imposter and venting. Guys, I made an Among Us reference, please laugh.
No!
Also, if you're hiding, you can use the terrain or use the labeled hiding spots like the lockers and grates. And if you're using a distraction, you can either get a human NPC to make some noise, use an item to alert the alien, or simply just make noise in one area then sneak away from it quickly. Of course, the alien's AI is also very cool, as while I don't think I've experienced it myself, I have heard it adapts to your playstyle as it learns your favorite hiding spots and what items you throw, which is really cool. Also, despite how good you may be at the game, there's always the chance that due to the alien's unpredictable AI, he can catch you lacking, which makes sure the tension never dies. Now, as we get into the cons, let me give an important announcement first. You see, when I started the game, I was completely scared by the alien even when he wasn't active, so I physically could not continue. This then caused me, out of fear of dying, to learn all I could about the alien, which is probably one of the stupidest things I could have done. Why is that so? Well, you see, the second you learn about the game, it's very hard to enjoy it the way it was intended. All that enjoyment from figuring out what strategies work and what don't, well, I killed that fun possibility off before it even started. Don't make the same mistake I made. So anyway, now let's actually get into the negatives. The first one is that the game really depends more on knowledge of the game than your skill at stealth. I was playing on hard difficulty the whole way through, and even Mission 17's quote-unquote corridor of death was a big breeze for me as I knew exactly when to take risks, not because of the experience I gathered, but from the knowledge I got from the wiki and subreddit. Another problem is that the mission design is kinda lacking, because outside of missions 5, 6, and 10, the map design is quite linear, so it becomes more about waiting them out rather than traversing from room to room hoping you don't come across the alien. That makes these missions a bit more boring. Also, the flamethrower definitely makes the game less fun, as you get a bit too much of the fuel, which means that as long as you use it conservatively, you should have enough fuel to use it most of the time when you're spotted. Again though, this might just be because I knew it was more effective to use short bursts of the flamethrower rather than burning the whole thing through because, again, I searched it on the wiki. Anyways, let's talk about the final thing, the horror aspect. The humans are obviously not scary, the droids are kinda scary but again not too much, and the facehuggers are definitely super scary at first, but lose their fear factor after the first time you're killed by them.
Hello there.
And of course, while the alien was scary at first, I ruined that part for myself rather quickly. Either way though, I think the game would have lost its scariness after the first or second jump scare, just like most horror games.
Get over here!
The tensions do still remain though, where there's many times where just chilling and progressing to your next objective, and then however, once again, the flamethrower lessened the tension because you know, even if you were spotted, you'd still have that safety cushion. So in conclusion, I'd say this game is roughly an 8.3 out of 10. If you like horror games, I definitely recommend this, but don't be an idiot like me and spoil it for yourself, even if you are scared out of your mind. Also about Survivor mode, I didn't buy any of the DLC, but the first map is quite fun, being well designed, with the only problem being there's not too much replayability and it is confusing at first with how you have to complete the side tasks. Maybe I'll make a video over the DLC like last time, eh? Anyways, now for my next big review, it'll be a game over.
Bingo?
And that's it, see ya. Oh yeah, by the way, screw this section bro, how the hell am I supposed to notice this ladder?